At one point in the discussion, I brought up the fact that the Quran, according to various hadith narrations, is going to intercede for Muslims on the day of resurrection. And in addition to that, I pointed out in certain versions, it tells us that the Quran will do so by appearing as a pale man. When Uthman asked us to show that to him, I simply mentioned that it's found in Tirmidhi, and he said, where? I found this kind of humorous because every time I hear Muslims cite hadith, they simply say it's in Bukhari, it's in Muslim, it's so forth. But he wanted us to give him the exact number and so forth. However, David was standing right there next to me, and he pulled up a version of the hadith that's found in Ibn Majah, and I actually hadn't even seen that one before. I was familiar with the one in Tirmidhi. And when David brought this up, Uthman replied by saying, oh, no, that's a weak hadith. But then David pointed out to him what says right here in the Darussalam, it says it is Hassan. But in opposition, Shaykh Uthman kept insisting, no, it's weak. Here is the clip of Shaykh Uthman where you can see him saying, no, it's not Hassan, it's weak, it's da'if, it's not to be trusted. So you've said the fact that Christ, the second person of the Trinity, Son of God, by virtue of becoming human and crying out to the Father, that there's a problem with that, a logical problem, and that's not something that Islam has to do with. Now, number one, I don't think that's a logical problem, but number two, I also don't think that's true Islamically. So I'd like you to tell me where I may have that wrong. I don't think I do, but I grant that you're the Imam, right? So, my understanding, which I have from other Muslims, which is part and parcel of why I hold that, and have read in the Islamic sources, that the Quran itself does intercede for Muslims, or will, on the Day of Judgment, right? The Quran will appear as a pale man and will say that he was the Muslim's companion in life and will intercede for him. Is that not correct?
Can you give me a reference for that?
That's in the hadith.
Which hadith?
Seriously, you don't think I'm going to go back? I mean, like, I don't know.
Are you saying that's not in the hadith?
That is not in any authentic hadith that I've ever read.
So you'd say it's not authentic? Oh, that's fine. If you say it's not authentic,
hold on, take it easy. So, to say the Quran will appear as a pale man, and what did you say it would be with
the Quran will intercede for Muslims and will say that it
as a pale man.
Well, that's in a Tirmidhi hadith, for example.
Let's look. I can look for it. Let's look for it. No, hold on. Because see, I like to discuss on evidences. So can I find a hadith in a Tirmidhi that says the Quran will be a pale man? Let's just find that, and then I will explain from there.
Okay, so, but that kind of misses the point that I'm making. You're focused on the pale man part, but I think you and I both know that it's classically Islamic to say the Quran will intercede.
So let me explain the shifa of the Quran?
Yeah, explain that.
Excellent. The Quran is Kalamullah.
You said. You told us that part.
That's part of the explanation.
Okay,
Take it easy, Andy. Okay. The Quran that is read by us, when we read the Quran, that Kalamullah will be an evidence for us. Do you understand what I mean? That the fact that we stayed up at night and read the Quran will make shifa. It will be an intercession. It will not be asking Allah for help or asking Allah separately than anything. It is only the fact that that good deed will be an intercession for you. Like if you had read the actual hadith, it talks about the Quran and another hadith about the siyam, the fasting. Right? We don't say fasting by itself is an entity, but it's the deed that is that intercedes for you.
So does the hadith say that the deed of reciting the Quran will intercede for you, or does the hadith say the Quran will intercede?
Again, so this is the thing. When you say Al-Quran was Siyam, these two will be shifa. They will be an intercession. Right? So what does that mean? That it is that deed of reading the Quran. Do you understand what that means now?
I understand what you're claiming. That's just not what the
hadith
says.
I searched for it. The first one that popped up, I know it's in Tirmidhi, but the first one that popped up was in Ibn Majah.
So in Tirmidhi, there is no such hadith that says the Quran.
There is. That's just the first one that popped up when I
Can we look at the Tirmidhi one first?
Okay, I'll find the Tirmidhi. But notice, the Ibn Majah version says the Quran will come on the day of resurrection like a pale man, and will say, "I am the one that kept you awake at night and made you thirsty during the day."
Excellent. So let's now go to. Hold on, take it easy. Yeah?
You're trying to see that.
No, take it easy. This is why.
You're not seriously going to go to Google Translate, are you?
Nope.
Okay. I know you know
You're
Arabic.
funny.
I know you know Arabic.
You don't
but
have Arabic keyboard?
No.
I was just going to show you the takhrij. You know what takhrij is? Okay. The checking of the narration.
Okay.
This narration of Ibn Majah is a very weak narration.
They didn't grade it this week.
Can you show me their grading?
Yeah, it's in Hassan.
Just it back.
It's in Arabic now.
You just ruined his phone. You can't see anything in English
he'll
now.
see. Where does it say Hasan? No, this is Darus Salam's grading, right? So this is not Sunnah.com, just a website. Okay?
So Darus Salam.
Darus Salam is a publishing house, right? That's not the
Yeah,
grading.
but they gave the rating according to Hadith scholars, right? They're not just making it up.
No. So we need to. I know this hadith, and that's why I was telling you, right? And I can show you the weakness in it if you like. Darussalam is a publishing house, not a scholar itself, right? Their grading by itself is not a hujjah, it's not an evidence. You have to look at the evidence from the scholars of hadith. That's not what I'm saying. That's why I asked you, right? Now, if you like, and if you, how long are you in San
So
Diego?
let me just
finish. How long are you in San Diego?
we're leaving tonight.
I was going to invite you to my house. I have a Majah.
Man, I appreciate the fact that you would have invited
You got
us.
dinner, you got tea, I got you. Right? And I would sit with you and explain to you from the Sharh of Ibn Majah why this hadith is da'if actually. Because I teach Aqidah and I taught the subject.
Now, interestingly, in addition to the fact that the Darussalam version says Hassan, whereas Uthman kept saying Da'if, weak, I was mentioning to Sam later this part of the conversation, and then Sam was pointing some things out to me.
Yes. Darus Salam publications, they're a Salafi publication. And unless the compiler himself, let's say Tirmidhi, states in the hadith, the grading, he'll say Hassan Gharib, it's good, it's strange, or Hassan Sahih. They usually will follow the grading of Shaykh al-Albani. For the Christians who don't know, Shaykh al-Albani was considered by the Salafis, primarily, the greatest 20th century hadith scholar. Now, those who are not Salafi don't really think that much of him because he's Salafi and his anthropomorphic ideas, but nonetheless, Uthman is Salafi and Darus Salam is Salafi. So they give you a grading, that's a grading that, for the most part, they got from Al-Albani. Now, to confirm the grading Hassan comes from Al-Albani, I'm going to go to Islam Question and Answer. This is an online Salafi site. It's question 93151. 93151. Good deeds appear in the form of a man in the grave. They narrate this hadith, so let me read it and then we'll go into to see what the grading is and where they got it from. Okay, here goes. It was narrated that Burayda said, I heard the Prophet say, the Quran will meet its companion on the day of resurrection when his grave is opened for him in the form of a pale man. This hadith you're referring to. It will say to him, do you recognize me? He will say, I do not recognize you. It will say, I am your companion, the Quran, who kept you thirsty on hot days and kept you awake at night. Every merchant benefits from his business, and today you will benefit from your good deeds. He will be given dominion in his right hand and eternity in his left, and there will be placed on his head a crown of dignity, and his parents will be clothed with priceless garments, the like of which have never been seen in this world. They will say, why have we been clothed with this? It will be said, because your son used to recite Quran. Then will be said to him, recite and ascend in the degrees of paradise, and he will continue to ascend so long as he recites, either at a fast pace or a slow pace. Now, narrated by Ahmad in Al-Musnad and in Ibn Majah in Al-Sunan. That's the one that David brought up, right? Classed as Hassan by Al-Bayhaqi, considered one of the greatest Muslim scholars of the past, in Al-Zawaid, and by Al-Albani and in Al-Silsila Al-Sahiha. So who graded it, Hassan? Al-Albani. So again, for those who don't know, typically, normally, when Darus Salam give you a grading, they're getting it from Al-Albani. So just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It seems to me that when Muslims are in a particular situation, and I've noticed this with quite a number of Muslims, sometimes they'll just say, the hadiths are not all valid. They won't necessarily say that particular hadith. They want to try and skate by, right, without making any specific statement. Just say some hadiths are weak and not trustworthy, so we just need to, right now in our discussion, focus on the Quran, right? So in my experience, it's kind of like anytime I want to use a hadith, it's automatically valid, right? We just accept it. Anytime you want to use a hadith to talk about Islam, oh, well, that might be a weak hadith or what have you. Well, in this particular conversation, it seems to me that Shaykh Uthman knew that on the spot we're not going to be able to pull up a bunch of stuff and show all these Islamic sources and scholars who classify this as a valid hadith. And so off the cuff is saying, it's weak, it's da'if, and so forth. But he knows, he's got to know, that we could later leave and then look up and see all the different scholars who have, in fact, given it a rating as Hassan or otherwise. And so, for what it's worth, he's wrong. The hadith is in the collections. It is given a sound rating. And I don't know of any, I don't recall him saying anything about any scholars who rated it da'if, in fact.